Hare Krishna. It's July 28th, 2023, and here we are at our morning program. Welcome. And I thought today we'll maybe do something a little different. We've done it over the years once in a while. And so to read from some letters from Srila Prabhupada, and just like, okay, we hear from Prabhupada, we read his books, and sometimes we'll play like a lecture, an audio or video lecture. Other ways to hear from Srila Prabhupada are his conversations. So I thought today we'll read, this is a book, it's a set of books called the Srila Prabhupada Sikshamrita, Nectarian Instructions from the Letters of His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. So it's a 3-volume set, and it says I didn't prepare, because wherever we touch Srila Prabhupada, it's nectar. That's what it says, Nectarian Instructions. So from my shelf, I chose volume 3. Volume 3. So in volume 3, there's many topics, and so I thought to turn to this topic, and this is this topic is relationship with Krishna. Okay, so it's like, gets to be philosophical. The next topic after that is entitled restaurants. So all of Prabhupada's letters on restaurants, the management of it, the importance of opening prasadam restaurants. Other topics here is sense control, including tongue control, eating, sex attraction, sleep, control of the mind, sadhana bhakti and regulative principles, Ratha Yatra and general festivals, and Srila Prabhupada has many letters about his god brothers and associates, and etc. So so I highly recommend, along with reading Prabhupada's books, studying Prabhupada's letters. So over the years, once in a while, we've read from some excerpts of letters from Prabhupada. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Om Anganatimirandasya Gananjana Shalakaya Chakshuranmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Svayamupa Kadamayam Darati Svapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Uttapada Kamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Saganaragnatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitan Krishna Chaitanya Deva Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sagana Lalita Shri Vishakanvitam He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radhakanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurange Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vishavanasate Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpata Yubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyeva Cha Patinan Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Sarasvati Devi Gauravani Pacharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Desha Tarine. Hare Krishna. Alright, so from the letters of Prabhupada, this is a section that each section goes chronologically. So the section's entitled Relationship with Krishna. March 21st, 1967, Prabhupada's writing to Satsvarup. For ourselves, when we are in perfect stage of devotional service, we can know our eternal relation with Krishna, and as such, one of the associates of Lord Krishna becomes our ideal leader. This acceptance of leadership by one of the eternal associates of the Lord is not artificial. Do not therefore try it at present. It will be automatically revealed to you in proper time. Okay. So, let's see, the next one, and I don't know where we're going to go with this. The next, yeah, sure, because each letter opens up discussion. Sure.
That seems like it's like from like Nectar of Devotion.
Yeah.
Where like because I think it's because when I was reading Nectar of Devotion, it was sounding like okay at some point, and this is rather esoteric or perhaps even can trend towards Sahaja if used improperly.
But it goes to esoteric places, yes.
Yeah, so it's like that's there's a certain almost it sounded to me like accepting an associate of Krishna as like guru or as like to follow in the footsteps of or something like that. So that's what Prabhupada's speaking there, that some associate to accept as leader. Yeah. That's the language he's using.
Yeah, that is what you're saying is my understanding of what Prabhupada's writing here early in the movement, March 21st, 1967. He's referring to the same sections of Nectar of Devotion you're referring to. And so it is esoteric, and that's why he's cautioned, don't try, therefore don't try it at present. Right. We don't want to be artificial, we're not going to Sahaja. At the same time, it is a real thing. Right. It is a real thing that one of the residents, like for a particular gopi or Sudama, one of the friends of Krishna, or Upananda, one of the parental figures, and at one point, they become our leader, and there's a particular meditation. So not to go there artificially, we recommend it. Like, how can I serve Prabhupada today? Focus there. At the same time, Prabhupada is discussing that in this letter. Yes.
That's before he even translated Nectar of Devotion.
Or
the summary book.
Yeah, this is before he had any books, pretty much, other than the first canto that he brought from India. Because from early in the movement, he's talking about Krishna. The devotees are asking these questions from the earliest times. So his letters go there. Thanks for your question. Malini.
I was thinking does it include the eternal associate of the Lord that are manifesting themselves for our vision? Because, I'm thinking of Narottam Das Thakur. He writes Shri Rupa Manjari Pada.
Yeah.
And so all those associates of the Lord, eternal associates of the Lord who come, like Srila Prabhupada, they also have a spiritual form.
Yes.
And so does that mean that when we follow them, we also kind of follow their eternal form?
Hare Krishna. Well, I appreciate the question. I don't have realization about that. At the same time, I think it's very profound what you're indicating. So Prabhupada writes, this acceptance of leadership by one of the eternal associates of the Lord is not artificial. For ourselves, when we are in perfect stage of devotional service, we can know our eternal relation with Krishna, and as much one of the associates of Lord Krishna becomes our ideal leader. So it's interesting where you're going with that, because Srila Prabhupada is one of those eternal associates. Each of the six Goswamis, Narottam Das Thakur. So that eternal associate, well, Prabhupada's an eternal associate, and we know he has forms other than the Vapu form of Prabhupada that we have on our altar. He has some form from Goloka Vrindavan. So he could be our ideal leader. It seems to me, why not? That makes sense. I appreciate going there. I don't have specific realization.
Yeah, and Bhaktivinoda Thakur also in his songs, like he hint of following a certain personality. Yeah, and in the Nectar, in Chaitanya Charitamrita also, is quite developed there, like we just read. But I'm just thinking, like, when we follow an eternal associate of the Lord, that's manifesting a form, like human form, like old man form or Christ form, whatever form. I was thinking, like, is it possible that we are attracted to that particular person, or that particular person call us because that's the soul's natural relationship with that relationship with the Lord?
Could you phrase that question again?
Different people are attracted by different leaders.
Yeah.
And different, leader for their spiritual life. And our soul have a specific attraction for a certain service with Krishna.
For a particular service, yeah.
And a certain relationship with Krishna. And it's explained in the Nectar of Devotion, Chaitanya Charitamrita, teaching of Lord Chaitanya, that, one will follow a certain inhabitant of Raj. Yeah. Usually that's what Prabhupada said, inhabitant of Raj. And to be trained. So I'm wondering if that, let's say, the follower of Srila Prabhupada, for example, a whole inhabitant of Raj that will be trained by Srila Prabhupada because they have a similar relationship with Krishna.
I see. Okay, I see.
And then someone else will be attracted by someone else because those souls, like they are attracted by. But I never seen Prabhupada explaining that. I'm just, that's just just a question. It's an interesting question to discuss, but like that.
Thank you, Melanie. Yeah, very, very interesting question to discuss. And I don't have realization. There is somewhere in Chaitanya Charitamrita, and Prabhupada talks about the acharyas being either gopis or cowherd boys. Like most are gopis, but some are followers of Nityananda and more of the cowherd boy mood. And so those who somehow stumbled into taking shelter of Srila Prabhupada, does that mean they have a particular type of relationship with Krishna like Prabhupada has? Or might some of them be in a different ras, or in their Siddha Swarup, in a different ras altogether? Yeah, I mean, I could conjecture, but I don't have realization about that. It seems for sure, as I know you're aware, we're encouraged to cultivate the mentality, my main relationship with Krishna is through his energy called Maya, and by serving our current link to the Parampara, the Shaktivesh avatar Srila Prabhupada, then I transform to, rather than serving the government through the prison house. The prison house is still rules and regulations. Through attraction to Maya, I move gradually to wanting to serve Krishna voluntarily, and in a mood of awe and reverence through Srila Prabhupada, and then whatever else gets revealed, then after that, again, that's there's one letter. Maybe it'll be in this section, and the devotee is writing, and we're not quite sure. We're not, because we don't see the disciples' letters, but the disciples asking questions. Well, is it like this? Is it like this? I mean, in the and then in one response, Prabhupada says, yes. Well, when you go to Krishna, why don't you ask him? Thank you, Mala.
Yeah, it's interesting to see that that's related to a discussion we had a few classes ago about, like, starting with Madhavendra Puri, Shwara Puri, Lord Chaitanya. We are so much giving the mood of the gopis, for example.
Yeah.
It's like insistence in our Shastra, insistence on the highest and the most advanced, and in a sense, the one we are following, Das and Udas and Udas, like the one we are following is the gopis.
Yes.
We are in our Shastra, we are kind of stir in that direction in some ways.
Yeah,
and it wasn't true. It wasn't true before that.
Right.
The devotees were not stirred in that direction. So does that mean something about, I'm not conjuncturing anything. I'm just asking questions. Does that mean something about even the follower in the wake of Lord Chaitanya? That those souls that are meant to be in Kali Yoga, follower of Lord Chaitanya, through Srila Prabhupada. It's just thinking of like the broader picture, the bigger picture of the soul's journey.
Bigger picture, and fascinating conjectures that maybe those who are coming to that parampara through Madhavendra Puri, through the Lord Chaitanya, through the Goswamis, through Srila Prabhupada, maybe they're not souls who are like naturally in Ayodhya or Dvarka, because there's a lot of the gopi, but I'm not sure about that. And of course, in worshiping Radha Krishna, Radha Govinda, or Radha Gopinath, we're instructed to worship them in the mood of Lakshmi Narayan, awe and reverence. But what's it mean about the essential Siddha Svarup of those who come to Prabhupada's movement? Hare Krishna.
Yeah, like Srila Prabhupada is protecting us. He knows that's part of the success in our spiritual life is to not be too concerned or absorbed, or like to really meet ourselves where we are at, which is not very far.
Yeah.
And at the same time, there is an emphasis in all our shastras on that. So it's interesting. And Srila Prabhupada so expertly kind of give us that emphasis and give us, like, be careful to meet yourself where you are at.
I like how you said that so expertly to integrate that. Yeah. Expertly. Yeah, giving us that inconceivable highest nectar to aspire for, while like being so grounded. Hare Krishna. All right. I'll read another letter. This is a letter from Srila Prabhupada to Purushottama, June 14, 1968. This section has about 10 pages of letters. Then the next section is restaurants. So Prabhupada writes, in the transcendental world there is no influence of Maya or time. So there is full freedom of activities, but because there is no Maya, therefore everyone is engaged in his natural activities or spontaneously serving Krishna in different relationships. Just like the hand is related with the whole body for some particular purpose, the leg is related with the whole body for some particular purpose, the ear is related to the whole body for some particular purpose, and so on. Similarly, all living entities, being eternally part and parcel of the Supreme Lord, are engaged in his service for some particular purpose. So there are varieties of engagements, but they are all united with the central figure, Lord Krishna. So this is the answer to your question. And then Prabhupada quotes the letter from the disciple. On Krishna Loka, are all of Krishna's pastimes with the living entities controlled by Krishna? Or do the living entities have choice in this matter? So we can see from the beginning, devotees are asking these questions. And before Prabhupada wrote too many books about it. So then Prabhupada goes on, in other words, is one's rasa governed by strict laws, determined by Krishna, or is there free choice aside from the free choice of choosing Krishna or Maya? That's very interesting. Yes. And Prabhupada writes there, similarly, all living entities, being eternally part and parcel of the Supreme Lord, are engaged in his service for some particular purpose. So there are varieties of engagements, but they are all united with the central figure, Lord Krishna. And as in the transcendental world, there is no influence of Maya or time. So there is full freedom of activities, but because there is no Maya, therefore everyone is engaged in his natural activities or spontaneously serving Krishna in different relationships. Okay. And then Prabhupada writes to Rupanuga in June of 1968, and let's just see where this one goes. Prabhupada writes, your question, what is the relationship of sweethearts in Vaikuntha to each other and to Lord Narayan? Is conjugal love, parental affection, and unalloyed friendship there in the Vaikuntha Lokas? And Prabhupada writes, no, in Vaikuntha there are two kinds of transcendental mellows, dasya and the lower half of Sakya Ras. The lower half of Sakya Ras means friendship in adoration, and the higher half of Sakya Ras is friendship on equal level. So in Vrindavan, the reciprocation of transcendental humor is higher than in Vaikuntha. It is there more free and spontaneous without any restriction arranged by Yoga Maya principle.
No Yoga Maya.
You're right. That's generally what we hear about the Vaikunthas, right? You might say the Vaikunthas, that's the only place there's no Maya. There's no, of course, we had a discussion fairly recently about Yoga Maya has different meanings, but generally we mean it's a force of illusion that puts one in illusion that deepens one's love for Krishna, like Mother Yashoda's in Yoga Maya. So she's worried about Krishna and wants to see if he ate dirt because he'll get sick. And then in this world, of course, there's the Mahamaya, but the Vaikunthas, no, they understand. They understand Vishnu, Narayan, Supreme Personality of Godhead, so there's no Maya there. And I do think that's what Prabhupada's referring to.
And like Goloka Vrindavan, there is Yoga Maya.
Yeah, Goloka Vrindavan's full of Yoga Maya. Malini.
It seems that from what Prabhupada is saying, it's probably not binary,
Not binary, right?
I think it's a progression. You know, there is people only, I believe where there is no yoga maya is like where there is like a neutrality of like one level of servitorship. But after that, it's like a progression in another level of even to be a servant of the Lord. You know, there is a need for yoga maya to some extent. But to speak about being a friend of the Lord, even a friend in awe and reverence, you know, there is a need somewhere.
Yes.
So it seems that it's more like very little, no, very little, and then like a progression of yoga maya up to really up to the gopis.
Progression, yeah. And we can see here, at least in the excerpt we have, because we get excerpts of the letter chosen by the editors, right? And then in the full letter, we might not know what's there, but Prabhupada, in a sense, he doesn't answer all parts of what Rupanuga was trying to ask, it seems. Prabhupada says, your question, what is the relationship of sweethearts in Vaikuntha to each other and to the Lord Narayan? Is conjugal love, parental affection, and unalloyed friendship there in the Vaikunthas? So Prabhupada says no, and then he doesn't seem so much to talk about the conjugal love part, because we know there are the queens there, but Prabhupada, he's not going there in the response. He's talking about the friendship aspect, like the unalloyed friendship. So he says, no, in Vaikuntha there are two kinds of transcendental mellows, dasya, servant, and the lower half of sakya, the lower half of friendship. So he doesn't, because we know there's some sort of some sort of conjugal relationship there, but Srila Prabhupada's kind of not going there in this response.
Isn't it that in the Chaitanya Charitamrita not so long ago we read that there's a Vaikuntha planet, and then there is those upper Vaikuntha, like there is also a gradation, upper planetary system in the Vaikuntha planet where there is Ayodhya and Dwarka, and then there is Goloka. So my understanding is that in a lower planet, like Vaikuntha planet, where now Lord Vishnu has four-arm form, and all the inhabitants also have four-arm form. Like there is no two-arm form as a king with his queen.
Right.
You know, it's like everything is so much in awe and reverence, and it's very beautiful. Like the entrance, like Jai and Vijay, you know, when the four Kumara arrives there, you know, the description of when they arrive in the Vaikuntha planet.
Yeah.
Well, it seems that this
chapter 15 of Canto 3.
It seems that maybe those places are devoid of even the queenship.
Could be, yeah.
You know, like because there is, it's not like every Vaikuntha planet is equal.
Yeah, and I think I mean I sense there's validity to what you're saying, because in that chapter, because like there, okay, Narayan, he's got the Lakshmis, but like the Jiva souls, they don't have opportunity to become that sort of tattva. So yeah, so it's like right. Yeah.
But the Jiva soul get to be in a tattva of Dwarka.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, either in Dasyaras or the lower form of Sakyaras, the kind of all in reverence type of Sakya.
But in Dwarka they get to be queens.
Yeah, right. That's different.
Not in
Vaikuntha.
Exactly. Yeah, and I think like Lord Chaitanya, he makes those distinctions between there is three level of Vaikuntha, let's say, with the highest being Goloka.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then, so it seems that in his response here, Prabhupada is speaking about those places from Vishnu.
I appreciate entering into these transcendental distinctions.
Well, that's what you choose to read those letters about those topics. So we may as well speak about those topics.
That's where we're going.
So some of the 16,108 queens are Jiva souls.
Yes, that's my understanding. Yeah, right. They're like the gopis. Like this. So they're special Shakti internal energy, but they're like the gopis. Yeah, that's my understanding.
The gopis, but not all gopis. They're not all equal, isn't it? Like nobody is going to be ever Vishaka or Lalita or any of the Asta Shaktis.
Right.
Yeah, and I believe for the Queen of Dwarka, it's the same. I don't remember if it's 8 or 108 that are special. And then after there's unlimited amount. It's not even 16,108, but an unlimited amount. But yeah.
Yeah, it's described like some are demigods visiting this planet for Krishna's pastime. Some are maybe they were conditioned souls who perfected their life through sadhana, and now they're appearing on a planet and they're getting final training on a planet where Krishna's appeared. Some are directly descended from Goloka Vrindavan. So yeah, there's different scenarios. Hare Krishna. Okay. So next letter is October 6, 1968. Prabhupada's writing to Advaita. He writes, I am so glad to learn that the New York devotees are all feeling my separation, and you are feeling also. This is very blissful. In the transcendental platform, actually separation is more relishable than meeting. But either separation or meeting, the state is always absolute. Actually, in the spiritual platform, there is no separation, but it is a different stage of rasas. Hare Krishna. Okay. Now, the next letter to Upendra, I think Prabhupada's opening the door to some of the questions we were at 20 minutes ago. So this is November 13, 1968. Your question, so I like that sometimes Prabhupada, he quotes the devotee's letter. Your question, when one has become pure enough, Krishna conscious, does one take regular dictation from one's Guru Maharaj? I know you to confirm yes, but how is this so? Understanding that each individual has a certain particular ras with Krishna, how would one relate with another soul of a different ras, especially between that of a guru and disciple? So that's the question from Upendra. And Prabhupada writes, that doesn't matter. The spiritual master's position is to train the disciple. Just like a teacher, he may be a very expert mathematician, but in the lower class he is teaching English. The spiritual master's duty is to train him, but when he comes to the perfectional stage of training, then he realizes his position. That is not a gift of the spiritual master. The spiritual master helps him to realize his relationship with the Lord. Just like the student in lower stages has to study so many things as preliminary education, English, history, math, etc., but in higher stage of education, he has got a particular subject. So he specializes as a mathematician or a historian, etc. So that special qualification reveals in the higher stage. So these topics are not to be discussed in the conditioned stage. And when we come to the liberated stage, we can understand. This is useless talks in the preliminary stage. This is useless talks in the preliminary stage. In the beginning, let us do the preliminary routine work very nicely and be cured of the disease out of Maya. Then we can know what taste you have for what particular type of food. So these things are not to be discussed at the present moment. So yeah, Prabhupada says that is not a gift of the spiritual master. Before that, Prabhupada says the spiritual master's duty is to train him, but when he comes to the perfectional stage of training, then he realizes his position. That is not a gift of the spiritual master. The spiritual master helps him to realize his relationship with the Lord. And then Prabhupada gives the analogy, just like the student in lower stages has to study so many things as preliminary education, English, history, math, etc. But in higher stage of education, he's got a particular subject. So he specializes as a mathematician or historian, etc. So that special qualification reveals in the higher stage. And then Prabhupada says, like many times, so these topics are not to be discussed in the conditioned stage. And when we come to the liberated stage, we can understand this is useless talks in the preliminary stage. And then again, I think when Prabhupada's statement says, the spiritual master's position is to train the disciple. Just like a teacher, he may be a very expert mathematician, but in the lower class, he is teaching English. And that's true, right? In the school system, as long as someone has some degree, you can teach basic English. You teach Math 101. Their degree might be an advanced degree in history or math. So what Prabhupada seems to be saying, if we take it out of the metaphor, maybe the spiritual master is completely developed in his rasa as a gopi or a cowherd boy or a parent in Goloka Vrindavan. But here he's teaching the basics to come out of Maya and to serve Krishna. And then when one is fully cleared the anartha nivriti stage out of Maya, I want to serve Krishna, then naturally the super Krishna from within the heart reveals what you naturally get your PhD in, what you naturally have your PhD in. That's my understanding.
So that would mean that our relationship with our present spiritual master is not necessarily eternal. It may happen life after life to disentangle us, but after disentanglement, it's not necessarily eternal. I'm just asking.
Yeah, yes. Well, I mean, it might not necessarily, well, of course it's eternal. We all have eternal relationships in serving Krishna.
Yeah.
To the extent that we're awakened to our nature as servants of Krishna, then all those relationships are eternal. But what it seems to be saying is, we might not have the same Siddhaswarup rasa as our spiritual master in this lifetime, right? We have our spiritual master in this lifetime, and our Siddhaswarup rasa might not be the same as his. That doesn't mean that our relationship's not eternal. It doesn't necessarily mean that. Like, because maybe in Goloka Vrindavan, we're still serving Srila Prabhupada, even if we have a different sort of rasa with Krishna, right?
If we are in a Vaikuntha planet, like the lower, we have a relationship with Vishnu.
Yeah.
But not really with Krishna. It's just something like Prabhupada says. We're speaking about it because that's what we are reading about it, but in a sense, it's not something we speak about much. But it's interesting because I heard many times, and in some ways it makes sense to me. I heard many times about accepting a spiritual master or accepting a mentor in spiritual life. that you can only go as far.
I'm with you.
You can only go as far as that spiritual mentor can take you, or you can only go as far as your spiritual master can take you.
Well, go as far as I see that. Hare Krishna Prabhupada, thanks for joining us this morning. I see that principle as true when we're talking about, like, if our spiritual master, or spiritual master in quotes, is like Kanishthadikari or Majjhimadikari. Now, of course, Srila Prabhupada, he's playing the role of a Majjhimadikari and he's an Uttamadikari. But that's in terms like of our of the modes of nature, of the modes of nature. And so, like, if our current link to the parampara, or the attempted one, is still like has a narta nivritti, then we're going to be limited in our advancement. You know, it's not like their every sound vibration is from Goloka. So that's like, yeah, we can only go so far in terms of getting free of the modes of material nature. But once you get, you know, beyond the modes of nature to the rasas, then I don't think that whole thing applies.
Makes sense.
Gajendra Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, good morning. This is, I'm kind of really soaring a little bit with this. It's just really very interesting. I'll try to keep my comments brief, but the first one is I read Prabhupada's a definition he gave for the word Ishtagoshti one time, and I sort of come from a time when Ishtagoshti was usually there was like some kind of problem in the temple that needed to be talked about. But Prabhupada said Ishtagoshti is when we come together to discuss what the spiritual master has said. And so this is reading of his letters and talking about them is for me, a higher aspect of Ishtagoshti. So I just wanted to say that.
Thank you. Thanks for that.
I'm also looking at, and I don't necessarily have any, you know, point or wisdom, but I do have a perspective. And I think, you know, it's sort of like, you know, what do words mean, even in a Sattva way? I mean, we use words, but what is really being meant? And so this is a little bit, you know, so, you know, contextually speaking, it's like I was just listening to that, and it's so interesting to me, and I'm appreciating it, and there's no, you know, disagreement or anything like that. But like, what is the spiritual master? And I think in the context that's being spoken, it's like, okay, well, a particular person, like Srila Prabhupada, or this person or that person. But I think it's also worth like looking at the context of the spiritual master, like in the beginning of Chaitanya Charitamrita, or in the 11th canto of Bhagavatam, that spiritual master kind of also means guru, and guru is kind of really everything that exists, because everything is representing Krishna.
Yeah.
And so, however, and you know, the Lord is within our heart, and that's Chaitya Guru, the spiritual master within. So I think it's absolutely correct. Like if you're looking at a particular individual and they don't have a certain knowledge, like if somebody only knows basic arithmetic, how do you learn calculus from this person?
Yeah.
It's not logical.
Right.
At the same time, if you're, you know, if one is sincere in Krishna consciousness in their relationship to Krishna, and I won't say, but I'm also alluding to something that was said earlier by Melanie, the spirit, you know, the concept of Sri Guru, perhaps not as an individual, but there's no limit as to these like it's. I'll stop there. I think you know what I'm trying to say.
I appreciate your perspective very much, including what you shared earlier about this is Ishtagoshti, reading Prabhupada's letters, and what's your perspective? What's your understanding? And this is Ishtagoshti, yes. Yeah, nice. And then, yeah, then, because, yes, look, and I think it relates to what you're saying relates about the end of these are useless talks in a preliminary stage. I think Prabhupada's pleased that we're having these talks because it's on the platform there. That what you're saying is like, this isn't linear. Krishna, the pure devotee, they're not limited. You were mentioning like the 11th canto, where like, yeah, the tree or the sky, like there's so many gurus and so many forms, and Krishna's super soul, the Parampara Acharyas, they can inspire us in infinite ways that are out of any box we might try to use to limit.
And the final quick comment I want to make, just again, it's a personal statement, is I don't separate any of that from the person of Srila Prabhupada, because for me, he is my Guru Maharaj, and I don't separate anything that happens, anyone I meet, anything I observe. I do tie it all very much to him, and that's my personalism in relation to him.
Thank you, Gajendra Prabhu.
All right, Krishna.
I appreciate with and resonate with that expression. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna. So, from the same letter that Prabhupada writes to Upendra, November 13th, 1968, same letter, or at least same date, maybe Prabhupada wrote two letters on the same date. Prabhupada writes, regarding your question, Svayam Rupa means the original form, Svayam Prakash means Balaram, and Tadekatma Rupa is the Purusha, just like Mahavishnu. It is not necessary to remember or fully understand all these different forms at the present, but it is like if you simply stick to the Master faithfully, that is very good. But if you know that my Master is so great and so rich and great in this way and rich in this way and that way, then your veneration for your Master will increase. To know Krishna is the greatest of all, is sufficient. But to know how Krishna is great, how he is expanded into different forms, that enhances our attachment to Krishna more rigidly. Right? So, Srila Prabhupada, I think, because it can be like, well, why 10 cantos of Bhagavad, all this detail, and the 24 Vishnu forms, and what's Tade Katmika? There's terms that I know, you've been reading Prabhupada's books for 40 years more, but I can't keep track of the. So he says, what's the point? And Prabhupada is agreeing, yeah, what's the point? Like Krishna says at the end of the 10th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, right? That Yadya vibhutin matratram shimarojidam ebhavan tatad eva bhagachatam mamitam sho and it's Krishna. So yeah, what's the point of all this detailed knowledge? And at the same time, because you just know Krishna is great. Krishna is my Master. That's enough. You don't need to get an onto. At the same time, he's saying that as we dive into learning more and hearing more, even memorizing more, then our veneration for our Master increases. So to understand how Krishna is present in nature and all the devotional Sankhya philosophy and Bhagavatam and the different forms and the names of the forms, it's an opportunity for us to deepen our veneration for Krishna. Malini.
It seems that Srila Prabhupada is making a distinction between learning for the sake of learning and learning for the sake of receiving.
Yes. Yeah, learning for the sake of really receiving and absorbing. I appreciate that distinction.
Yeah.
Excellent distinction. So, on November 24th, 1968, Srila Prabhupada writes to Hansadutta, You describe that you are seeing more and more how Krishna is your friend, and this is very nice. The more one understands that Krishna is my friend, and my duty is to serve my dearest friend, the more one can know that he is advancing in Krishna consciousness. I'll read that again. It's a short excerpt. You describe that you are seeing more and more how Krishna is your friend, and this is very nice. The more one understands that Krishna is my friend, and my duty is to serve my dearest friend, the more one can know that he is advancing in Krishna consciousness. Krishna is our dearmost friend. And then also a letter to Hamsadutta. Actually, there's a series of letters to Hamsadutta here. This next one, the next two actually, the next two are letters, a letter to Hamsadutta, January 16th, 1969. Srila Prabhupada writes, the absence of the idea of God is not very important, but the sense of loving God is the most important. The cowherd boys and all of the residents of Vrindavan were so much absorbed in love of Krishna that naturally there was absence of the idea of God. Yashoda was so much absorbed in love of Krishna that she did not care to know that he is God. Our whole philosophy is to increase our love for Krishna. Love with awe and veneration and love that is spontaneous is different. But still one has to learn about the greatness of Krishna. To come to the stage of spontaneous love for Krishna is a very high stage, and it is not to be imitated. In our conditioned state of life, we should worship Krishna as God with respect and veneration. That is the system. The relationship of the spiritual master and the disciple is not the same as the relationship with Krishna in Vrindavan. The relationship with the spiritual master must always be continued with the greatest respect and veneration, without forgetting his exalted position like father and son. Regarding your question about my Guru Maharaj, I never told anyone that he was one of the 8 Shaktis. I do not know how you got this news. According to Vaishnava principles, nobody should think or imagine somebody as Krishna, Radharani, or their associates. Everyone should aspire to follow the footprints of such associates. If somebody thinks that somebody is Radha or Krishna, that is not sanctioned by the Vaishnava philosophy. So far as I know, my Guru Maharaj's position was one of the assistants of the Manjaris. For the present, it is better not to discuss on these confidential things of a higher level, but you are always welcome to put your genuine questions for an answer. Otherwise, how will you know things as they are? There's a lot there we could unpack, but maybe go to the next letter. It's Prabhupada writing to Gargamuni, February 5th, 1969. Regarding the 8 gopis and my spiritual master, I think you did not follow what I said, but that does not mean you should be disappointed. We are all students and we are apt to commit mistakes, but that does not mean we should be disappointed. Lord Chaitanya also presented himself before Prakashananda Sarasvati as a foolish student of his spiritual master, although he was the Supreme Personality of Godhead himself. Anyway, the actual fact is that the 8 gopis are as good as Krishna and Radharani. Therefore, no Vaishnava will claim to be one of the 8 gopis, because that will tinge one with Mayavadi philosophy. If somebody says, I am Krishna, or I am Radharani, or I am one of the gopis, that is against Krishna philosophy. My Guru Maharaj claimed to be one of the sub-devotee assistants of the 8 gopis. Lord Chaitanya also claimed himself as servant of the servant of the servant of Krishna. So even though you might not have understood, you can correct it now and don't be disappointed. Hare Krishna. Next, Prabhupada's writing to Lilavati. Lilavati April 25th, 1969. Regarding your question about the relationship between the living entities and Krishna, the answer is that qualitatively we are one with Krishna. There is no qualitative difference, although the living entity has a different function than Krishna. Prakriti means nature. Just like fire, its nature is heat, and the heat is not a different quality, although the function is different. In one sense, fire and heat are not different. Therefore, Lord Chaitanya's philosophy of inconceivably, simultaneously one and different is the perfect philosophy of our relationship with the absolute truth. Everything is manifestation of the Prakriti of the Lord, exactly like the heat and light of the fire. Heat and light are not different from the fire, but at the same time, heat and light are not fire. In this way, we have to understand the Purusha and Prakriti. The Lord is the Purusha or enjoyer, and Prakriti is the enjoyed. Next, in a letter to Vrindavaneshwari, June 6, 1969, I'm thinking it's probably the Vrindavaneshwari who's here in Alachua. In your second question, you asked if we will remember the earth when in Vrindavan, and the answer is certainly. When Narada Muni was talking to Vyasadeva, as you may have read in the first volume of our Srimad Bhagavatam, he was in a spiritual body, but he remembered his previous life and explained it to Vyasadeva. In material life there is forgetfulness, but in spiritual life there is no forgetfulness. I hope this will sufficiently answer these questions for you. Right, so spirit is Chit Shakti, consciousness, forgetfulness. Of course, there's spiritual forgetfulness, that's yoga mind. But material body means like, do you remember your last lives? I don't remember what I was doing yesterday at 2 p.m. Like last lives, give me a break. But then, this Mataji asked a question. So Prabhupada said, yeah, Narada Muni, he remembered his past life because he's fully alive in Chit Shakti, and he described his previous life to Vyasadeva, Srimad Bhagavatam.
That's maybe why Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita that we never return.
Yeah, because yeah. Well, I think that's a point, and because because I want to retain my false ego independence. Some people say like, well, how come we can't remember? But see, the forgetfulness helps me to continue my desire to stay in material life, because like if we really remembered all the misery and hell we created for ourselves, we'd probably have a better chance to get urgent about Krishna consciousness. But I don't want to get urgent about Krishna. So the material ignorance and like, I don't remember, that helps us to maintain material foolishness. Yeah. But I like how you said that's a reason why Krishna says we don't return. Because it's not that we can't return, but like one in full consciousness, like why would I want to go back to be a pig in slop? Why would I go back to this misery? So Prabhupada writes to Vishal Das, June 16th, 1969. Your next question is if Vishal Das will be your name eternally. So Prabhupada writes, he's paraphrasing the question from the disciple. Your next question is if Vishal Das will be your name eternally. As I have told you in San Francisco, Vishal means Krishna, the greatest, and Das means the servant of. So eternally you are the servant of Vishal or Krishna, and thus you are always Vishal Das. Krishna has so many different names because he is unlimited in all respects, and you are Krishna's eternal servant. What your name will be eternally is not a very important subject at the present moment, but it is sufficient for you to know that you are always the servant of Vishal, Krishna. That's very, very expert response. What your name will be eternally is not a very important subject at the present moment, but it is sufficient for you to know that you are always the servant of Vishal, Krishna. Okay, and Prabhupada writes to Janaki, February 28, 1969, regarding your questions, as Brahma realized that he was the maidservant of Krishna, Similarly, every one of us has to realize that Krishna is the only single Purusha. Purusha synonymously means male, but actually in the spiritual dictionary, male means enjoyer and female means enjoyed. So in this sense, Krishna is the only male and all others being energies of Krishna, they are Prakriti or female. Please do not try to understand this male and female in the material sense. In other words, our perfection of life will be actually realizing that we are all females. In the material world, we have got simply different dresses. Here in the material world, everyone is in the temperament of male. Even the so-called females are also in that temperament. This is very prominent in the Western part of the world, and you know it very well how the females here think on the level of equality with males. This aptitude is material.
I love Srila Prabhupada saying a spiritual dictionary.
Spiritual dictionary. Yeah.
It's a nice way to, like in the Bhagavad Gita reading we do with women. It's nice to, regularly I need to go there to explain like male, female, Prakriti and Purusha.
Yeah.
And I like that expression in spiritual dictionary. It has nothing to do with the dress of female or the dress of male.
Yeah, beautiful. Yeah. Actually, in the spiritual dictionary, male means enjoy. Thanks for highlighting that. All right. We'll read maybe another 2 or 3 letters on the topic of relationship with Krishna. This is a letter to Shivananda, July 22nd, 1969. Jai Govinda was correct in his observation that Radha Krishna pastime should not be discussed at the present time. Unless one is highly elevated in spiritual understanding, it is risky to discuss these pastimes. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu never discussed Radha Krishna Leela with ordinary persons. We have so many other things to discuss. What is the soul? What is bhakti? To understand Radha and Krishna's pastimes, that is our aim, but we should not indulge in this at present. Then there is sure to be misunderstanding. And on November 23rd, 1969, Srila Prabhupada writes to Madhusudan, regarding your second question about the rasas in Narayan's abode, it does not go higher than servitude and reverential friendship. So Prabhupada said that in another letter too. A letter to Bhagavan Das, January 28, 1970. Letter to Bhagavan. Regarding your question, Santaras devotee has got unflinching faith in Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but he has not developed the tendency to serve him. The service stage is in relation with Bhagavan the person. When service attitude is lacking, it is to be understood as worship of Paramatma or Brahman. In Paramatma or Brahman relationship, the emotion is of oneness, which is considered to be on the lower stage. In the Shantarasa stage, there is a chance of meeting a devotee by the grace of Lord Krishna, and therefore generally the next birth is human being. Unless there is a great fall down on account of various reasons, any transcendentalist, either personalist or impersonalist, if he makes regular progress in the regulative principles, even though he does not finish the whole program, he is sure to get his next birth in a good family, generally a rich man's or a pure Brahmin's. That is confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita. Hare Krishna. Okay. There's such amazing topics here. All right. So, the next one is a letter to Jagadish, February 27th, 1970. Regarding your questions concerning the spirit souls falling into Maya's influence, it is not that those who have developed a passive relationship with Krishna are more likely to fall into Nishan activities. That's an important point from my point of view. Usually anyone who has developed his relationship with Krishna does not fall down in any circumstance, but because the independence is always there, the soul may fall down from any position or any relationship by misuse of his independence. but his relationship with Krishna is never lost. Simply it is forgotten by the influence of Maya, so it may be regained or received by the process of hearing the holy name of Krishna, and then the devotee engages himself in the service of the Lord, which is his original and constitutional position. The relationship of the living entity with Krishna is eternal, as both Krishna and the living entity are eternal. The process is one of revival only, nothing new. Okay, so in that letter, Prabhupada's writing to Jagadish about relationship with Krishna, and Prabhupada makes some clear and succinct statements about that conversation around fall of the jiva. I mean, Prabhupada says, regarding your questions concerning the spirit souls falling into Maya's influence, it is not that those who have developed a passive relationship with Krishna are more likely to fall into Neshan activities. So Prabhupada's saying it's not that, one who's in Madhurya Ras or Sakya Ras, they have less a chance of falling than someone who's a blade of grass or someone in Dwarkis. Prabhupada's saying, no, that's not the case. And Prabhupada's saying, usually anyone who has developed his relationship with Krishna does not fall down in any circumstances. But because the independence is always there, the soul may fall down from any position or any relationship by misuse of his independence. That kind of answers a lot of questions. But because the independence is always there, the soul may fall down from any position or any relationship by misuse of his independence. Hare Krishna. That answers a lot of questions. Okay. April 1st, 1970, Srila Prabhupada letter to Himavati. Radha Krishna topics are for both liberated and conditioned souls. But conditioned souls should not much discuss about the loving affairs between Radha and Krishna, because sometimes they misunderstand Radha and Krishna as ordinary boy and girl. So this should be discussed with advanced students, not with ordinary men. And then a letter to Tamal, June 1st, 1970. Regarding your second question, what determines whether a devotee goes to a Vaikuntha planet or a Goloka Vrindavan? Prabhupada writes, those devotees who are following Vaidhi Marg are meant for going to Vaikuntha planets, and those who are following Raga Marg are meant for going to Krishna Loka. It is generally that the followers of Lord Chaitanya are going to Goloka Vrindavan. That relates to something we discussed about an hour ago. Prabhupada writes, it is generally that the followers of Lord Chaitanya are going to Goloka Vrindavan. There is no difference between the Vaikuntha planets and Krishna Loka. It is a matter of personal taste only. Okay, I'll read that one again.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Regarding your second question, what determines whether a devotee goes to a Vaikuntha planet or to Goloka Vrindavan? Those devotees who are following Vaidhi Marg are meant for going to Vaikuntha planets, and those who are following Raga Marg are meant for going to Krishna Loka. It is generally that the followers of Lord Chaitanya are going to Goloka Vrindavan. There is no difference between the Vaikuntha planets and Krishna Loka. It is a matter of personal taste only.
It's very interesting because as followers of Lord Chaitanya, we are following the Vaidhi Marg.
Okay. So my conjecture there.
Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti.
Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti. Yeah. My conjecture there is that, okay, and that the Vaidhi is meant to bring us to the Raga. It's meant to bring us there. And then if we come to the place of Raga, of course, one who's actually at Raga, they're not going to announce it, right? They're not going to like make an announcement about it. Okay, so one who comes
they may make the opposite announcement.
They might make the opposite announcement. So one who comes to the point of Raga, then they may, and almost surely will, at least within our context, followers of Prabhupada, they're going to continue to practice sadhana, but even though they might continue to follow Vaidhi, but they're no longer in Vaidhi Marg. They're on Raga Marg. They're on Raga Marg, who happens to be externally following because that's their service, that's their purpose, that's the example they want to show. So my understanding is, if we don't come to a place of Raga Marg, and my understanding is this is not this is not just like a clear distinction. It's a continuum. But if the practitioner of Vaidhi sadhana does not come to Raga, then they won't go to Krishna Loka. They won't go to Krishna Loka. Maybe they'll be eligible for Vaikuntha. And at the same time, keep in mind, because we can think of like, I've been practicing for decades and maybe lifetimes, but like for a sincere devotee, like right there, just keep it, I think this might be relevant. You know, in those last days, months, maybe even nanoseconds before the soul leaves the body, a lot can happen. A lot can happen with Lord Chaitanya and Srila Prabhupada and Super Soul and Krishna and the gopis all conspiring for the soul who showed sincerity and for the soul to transform and like give up any material attachment to transform from anartas to vaidhi to raga. I mean, because we can think, oh, it takes it, but at the same time, Prabhupada has a lot of comments, like, you know, at the time of death for the sincere soul, Lord Chaitanya can help out quite a bit. And
himself too.
Yeah.
There will come at the time of your death.
Yeah.
I will come to free you.
Yeah.
It seems also what he's saying could be understood by, okay, there is people who are following the Vaidhi marg and people who are following the Raga marg. The Raga marg will go to Goloka.
Yeah.
But if you are a follower of Lord Chaitanya, the Vaidhi path, in a sense, like you were saying, is led towards the Raganuga.
Yeah. Yes.
And then in that way, because in that frame of reference of Lord Chaitanya's followers, the Vaidhi is a stepping stone to go to Raga.
Yeah.
Then the follower of, because that's a system, then the follower of Lord Chaitanya go to Goloka Vrindavan.
Yeah.
Like that. But like, let's say, like someone who is not a follower of Lord Chaitanya, where maybe the Vaidhi mark is not a stepping stone towards Raganuga, then they are going to go to the Vaikuntha planet.
Right.
Like you know, before Madhavendra Puri.
Right. Before Madhavendra Puri, or my understanding, like some of the other before Madhavendra Puri, I think a lot of the followers of in the Sri Sampradaya, followers of Ram, they're going for the Narayan Vaikunthas, and that's all about rules and regulations, you know, with heart. So it's like,
and it's no stepping stone to Raga. It's just
right.
it.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
So following Lord Chaitanya, the Vaidhi is a stepping stone to Raga.
Mm-hmm.
So that what you're saying, I think, is true.
Mm.
Well, okay, I'll read one more letter. Okay, this one is to Vrindavan Chandra, July 19th, 1970. Yes, Krishna fulfills everyone's desires fully. He can fulfill our desires either materially or spiritually. Material desires to be the supreme enjoyer or God are not natural desires, however. Such desire is Maya. Maya means what is not. Our constitutional position is not that of the supreme enjoyer. So such desire is unnatural and false. Krishna fulfills the ultimate spiritual desire of everyone also. According to one's constitutional position, he enjoys a perfect relationship of love with Krishna. Just like a hand is not happy when it is trying to be independent, and it becomes naturally happy when it acts in its constitutional capacity as subordinate part and parcel of the whole body. But if the hand desires to be the complete body, that desire is not constitutional. So such fulfillment of false desire cannot be real. However, for those who are not advanced in their intelligence and desire to be one with the Supreme, Krishna grants such persons the opportunity to merge their identity in his transcendental effulgent body. So that desire can be fulfilled by Krishna also, but one who is in full knowledge of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and who knows his own constitutional position never desires in that way. Rather, he always desires only to fulfill his constitutional position as servant of Krishna, and such service is complete and perfect and the supreme pleasure for the living entity. Yeah. Who can enjoy more than one who is always enjoying Krishna? So it may be said that his enjoyment is supreme. Hare Krishna. Prabhupada seems to make it clear that no one's eternal position is the impersonal Brahma-Jyoti. Because he says, yeah, Krishna can grant such persons of merging their identity in his transcendental effulgent body. So that desire can be fulfilled by Krishna also. But one who is in full knowledge of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and who knows his own constitutional position never desires in that way. Rather, he always desires only to fulfill his constitutional position as servant of Krishna, and such service is complete and perfect and the supreme pleasure for the living entity. So Prabhupada seems to be saying that, okay, it's sort of a spiritual desire, either merge in the Brahma-Jyoti or merge into Krishna's body. In the Atmarama chapter that we're studying in our Chaitanya Charitamrita group, different types of impersonal liberation are described. But Prabhupada's saying that, okay, but that's not one's final destination, because if one's realizing their constitutional position, they're not going to desire any of those, merging type of liberations. Okay, any last comments, questions, realizations before we close? Okay. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Jai.
Thank you, Prabhus. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.